So fancy.
Good morning. You are watching the DMZ America podcast with editorial cartoonist Ted Rall. That's me coming to you from the left.
And coming to you from the, I don't know what the hell I am anymore, Ted. I just don't know.
You don't know.
Let's say the right, just because that's our, conceit on this podcast. But okay. I'm Scott Stantis, by the way, editorial cartoonist. So welcome to the podcast, everyone. We have a very special guest this episode. I will jump in and give you personal information in a moment, but I'll bullet point the resume here. This is Sarah Davidson. Sarah is a comic artist, colorist, and instructor at Savannah College of Art and Design, or SCAD, as we like to call it, because, I'm down with the kids. You know that. Sarah's first original graphic novel, Jackson Wilder Adventures, published through Paper Cuts, was named one of American Library Association's best graphic novels for children. And she just signed, is that a cat? What the hell? This is like the cat podcast now. Ted is going to have to come back in. But Sarah just signed a deal for 2 original middle grade graphic novels to Random House. And I am insanely jealous of that. But we really kind of wanted to bring Sarah in on a personal note. I've known Sarah forever. And since she was very young, an aspiring cartoonist, we've worked together on projects. I was just reminded, Sarah, that when I had shoulder surgery many years ago, I was asked many cartoonists for about a month to draw the strip. Mm-hmm. And I asked you, and were you in high school?
I was maybe like 17 or 18 years old at the time. And you were like, yeah, you just want to draw my nationally syndicated comic strip for a few days. Why not?
How old were you?
17 or 18, I think. Yeah.
Well, you did better than most, because the funny thing is it's a political comic strip. And Ted, I don't know if I ever told you this story. So a lot of the cartoonists are not. And so they would spend the whole week saying, Scott Stantis is an idiot. Here's what he should be thinking. Sarah happily actually did an actual storyline with the characters, but the rest of, I know you'll be shocked that our fraternity was not nice.
They should be, honestly.
You'd think. Many of them were like demanding money. It was like,
assholes.
Yeah. I said, well, I'll do it for you when you need it. I want money. I go, well, I've got $3.76 in my pocket. I'll take it.
And I was 18. I was just happy to be asked.
And you did a great job. And I asked you actually drew some more for me. And we worked together on some other projects. The Hamilton exhibit being the most arduous and harrowing, because
just calling each other at 2 a.m. about edits and colors.
It was horrible, because I was in DC I was giving a talk, and I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. Janine and I going down to DC, hanging out, looking at our nation's capital. Literally spent, other than the speech itself, every spare moment in the hotel room drawing these drawings for the Hamilton exhibit, which lasted about a month and then folded.
And it was supposed to tour the country, and it just never did.
No.
Is that true? What is that? When was this? Was this during the pandemic, or?
It was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was right when at the heat of the Hamilton musical, and they decided to put together an exhibit. But the problem is they couldn't get a lot of the stuff they probably like. It would have been cool to see, for instance, a coat that Hamilton wore, or the gun. They couldn't even get the guns used in the duel, which do exist. But they asked me to do some drawings for the debate on the Constitution section, and so they projected it and had voiceovers. They had the cast do it, which was pretty cool. The only thing is, they said, okay, it's only going to be like 10, 12 drawings. Ted's got that smile on his face because he knows where this is going.
I know this
Sarah, last time I counted them the other day, it was 133.
Good Lord, I was gonna guess like 60 or 80. That's crazy.
No, we were a flipping factory that for 2 days, and plus the deadline came up, and they didn't tell me anything. Mm-hmm. Hey Ted, if you notice what's coming into Sarah there, that's which gato is that?
This is Perry.
Oh, hello.
God, I'm surrounded by cat people. Good God.
And you're a more successful, happy person if you had a cat.
Exactly.
Instead of the bitter loser that I am, is that what you're saying?
Say even more successful.
Anyway, that's a long explanation to how I know Sarah and have been a huge fan and always expected success, and now it's coming. And like I mentioned at the top of the show, the reason we had Sarah on is we want to have some optimism, because Ted and I can be kind of downers when it comes to, and we should be. We're comic artists, we're comic strip artists, and we work in large part in newspapers. And
Thanks for with newspapers, right?
Thanks for the grunt, Sarah. I was like,
I mean, newspapers, like, who even buys them? I'm sorry, guys.
Nobody. I taught a course. I'm not sure if I told you this. I think I did, because I asked you about it. I taught a course at UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, at the Honors College, and I was discovering the power in comic art. And prior to the start of the class, I asked the students, how many of you have read a newspaper? Not one hand goes up. Not one hand. How many of you seen a comic strip in a newspaper in the last 2 years? No hands. Editorial cartoon may have been just like some kind of form of Dutch expressionism from the 1880s, because they really, the faces were just blank. What's interesting is the course was didn't need to draw. You didn't need to have that skill set, but you had, stick figures is fine. And so each segment was dedicated to editorial cartooning, comic strip, gag, graphic novels. Graphic novels, by the way, had the highest hand raise of that survey.
I believe it.
And they all loved them. They were good at it too. But these are honor students, so they're smart, and they were very good at understanding caricature, understanding editorial cartooning, understanding comic strips, gag cartoons. But they kept saying at the end of each course, these are great. Where can we see these? Just going to go.
Yeah, we're done here. Yeah.
But so graphic novels, you're teaching, you're instructing. Now, I'm going to tell how many students are you instructing now? I mean, are you seeing a continued and growing interest in like a SCAD type community, an art community that still finds them interesting and worth doing?
Yeah, I mean, the population in the sequential art department at SCAD, it's like the 4th largest department at the university. On any regular basis, like most semesters, we've got like over 1,000 students enrolled in learning how to do comics and storyboards.
So what do they hope to, I mean, like I said, we're downers, we're old guys, but where do they want to go? Where do they think they can go?
Yeah, a lot of them are really into webcomics. So like Webtoon and like individually hosted webcomics. There are people that want to do like comic strips, but those have primarily migrated to social media. So you get really popular like Instagram comics, like Sarah Scribbles and Katana Comics and Pizza Cake and things like that. A lot of them want to do graphic novels. They have these big epic stories that they want to tell and characters that they want to bring to life. And so a lot of it is like long form narrative storytelling. And there's a huge handful of people that want to go into storyboarding, and there's like, a lot of overlap with comics and storyboards. And so they come to us to learn like visual storytelling in that aspect as well.
So is AI, I know AI stepping into storyboarding big time. Is that an issue for you, and how do you navigate that for your students, or what do you tell them?
So as far as AI is concerned in a lot of our industries, like obviously animation is unfortunately starting to embrace a lot of AI. Like we see it in animation and viz dev and VFX and things like that. In general, the comic industry as a whole is very against AI. My last several contracts that I had all had anti-AI clauses built into it. So can
you expand on that real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's in my contract, it says that if I use generative AI in any capacity, then I am in breach of contract, and they will pull my books from the shelves, and I will have to return some of the money from my advance. They don't want it. Publishers don't want it. Editors don't want it. Artists don't want it. So while it does feel like a lot of other creative industries are starting to like embrace AI, especially for like a lot of the entry level, tedious kind of things, generally the comic book industry as a whole doesn't want it. The readers don't want it. The artists don't want it. So they're taking very strong stands against it. And the people that are trying to like use it in the industry are getting ridiculed. They're getting laughed at. It's not treated seriously or genuinely.
Obviously a lot of this is like about the field test, right? But what's the difference between, how is AI somehow cheating compared to, say, using Photoshop to color, or using a lettering program rather than inking your text, or using a comics layout program? Those are all technological innovations that, hell, you can go back to Letrotone and Duo Shade, and all of these things were, cheating at some point, I guess. Do you think this is just something you're going to see right now, and that's going to fall away as AI gets more accepted and people realize they just can't, you can't hold back the beast? Or is this a purity test? Is this, what's going on? Why is this?
A lot of it is, definitely like everybody's always using new tools, right? Like when digital softwares came out, everybody was like, oh, this is the death of the traditional artist. Nobody will ever draw by hand again because now Photoshop exists. When CG animation happened, everyone was like, nobody will ever draw in 2D again because now CG exists. They were saying that for a while CG would replace actors entirely, right? There's always this kind of fear mongering when a new technology exists, that this technology is going to render everything that we've done for the last 30 years completely irrelevant and nobody will ever do things like the old way again.
Yeah, no one will ever listen to radio now that there's television or whatever.
Exactly. Nobody will listen to records, right? And now there's this huge resurgence in vinyl and cassettes, and people are going and buying DVDs and VHS tapes.
I'm still waiting for 8-track to come back, but
yeah, that one's going to happen. That's the next one.
Anytime.
So I think there is like a certain level of, oh, here's this new thing and it's going to replace everything that we do. Which happens every time there's some kind of innovation. But I think a lot of it is it's about the ethicalness of AI, because when it comes to art, generative AI is scraping other people's artwork, usually without their consent and without their permission. And so for a lot of the creative community, from the artist side and from the writing side, that's theft. There's some weird static coming in somewhere. But it's theft. It's not ethical. It's not morally okay. And so that's where a lot of it comes in. And so much of it too is, we go into art to tell stories and create characters, and we do it because we love drawing. If I didn't love drawing, I wouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing. And so, plugging something into...
A lot of cartoonists don't like drawing. Gary Trudeau doesn't like drawing. So he has, for many years, had he's paid someone to do his drawings for him. Mm-hmm. People, I'm a graphic novelist also. I did one graphic novel where I wrote and I had someone else draw it. Mm-hmm. And it freed me up to focus more on the writing, which I really liked. I like drawing, but I also liked not drawing. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I was, well, and if I could jump in and just say, I have someone drawing my comic strip because a long time ago, I know, Ted, I still don't know how your hand's functioning because I went through, and I have carpal everything now. It hurts to draw any length of time. If I have to draw more than one drawing a day, it hurts. So, but AI, I wouldn't think of turning around. First of all, have you ever tried to get AI to draw like you draw? It's very difficult.
I've been working on that, as you and I both know.
Well, yeah, but you enter your own work, your script. Now, a friend of ours, we've had someone who was a guest on the show previously, Mark Fiore, who's an animator and won the Pulitzer for animated editorial work, I think he's premiering it, isn't he? At NCS is having a webinar this week, and he started some software where you can plug in your artwork and find out who's stealing it.
Oh,
Because that is on
But
some.
I mean, that's not the same thing. I mean, I agree there's an ethical issue with material, using any material that's even 1% scraped from other people's art. That's ethically, I mean, that's stealing. But I mean, I don't see how it's stealing if you were to train an AI model only on your own hand-drawn work and used it to generate images. I don't see how that would be stealing.
Do you think that would cross the line, Sarah?
It's one of those things where everyone kind of has to decide for themselves. At a certain level, if you can guarantee that it's only based on your own work and that's a thing that you want to do, then I see no moral reason to not do it. It's there are obviously still like the overarching like climate concerns and environmental concerns with AI and data centers and things like that.
We can't do anything about that. As an
doesn't
individual,
mean we have to contribute to it. There are a lot of levels to it. As long as, like I've always said, if generative AI can get to the point where we can absolutely guarantee that it is like ethically, morally, like all on board, then it's a tool that can be used like any other tool, and it's up to the personal, like individual artist to determine where that level of what they want to use it for is. It's AI is a tool. Right now, I think that the state of that tool is not at a point that can be reasonably used morally or ethically. And I think more and more people want to see human created work. They want to see the hand of the artist. Art that is looking too shiny and too digital, even looks like AI, is starting to get like shot down and ridiculed. And people want to see like that genuineness and that authenticity. They want to see the person in the art and in the stories.
let me ask you. Let's pivot a little bit. So the graphic novels. I always have ideas for them. I've done a bunch of them. I'll do more. Scott and I have been working on one together, but we've got to like get our shit back in.
We do absolutely.
And it's going to be good. But that's one of those things where Scott's drawing and I'm writing. But like the thing is, I guess what's getting me is that the disruption in the book industry overall has pushed down the remuneration for a graphic novel from, it was like not unreasonable to think you might get maybe 10 grand or maybe even 20 grand as an advance for a graphic novel back in the 90s or the early 2000s. Now, you'll be lucky if you get 3,000 from a publisher. And the thing is, you're talking about a project that can consume, a year or two of your life. It's just is this a sustainable business model? Are you going to be able to continue to get people to draw these things? It seems to me like if you're familiar with my work, I'm not an art snob. I don't have a pretty drawing style. And when I go to the bookstore and look at the graphic novels, I'm literally like, oh my God, so many of these best-selling graphic novels, they look like shit. They're drawn terribly. And I'm like, if Ted Rall tells you your art sucks, your art sucks. And I'm like, and a part of me is thinking, well, that's because people who draw well either can't take the time to justify that for $4,000, or they're just like opting out of the business entirely, or is something else going on? I don't know. I'm just wondering are the economics in crisis? Because publishers are psyched. The graphic novels sell in the aggregate, but if you don't have individual graphic novelists able to make a living doing it, how does it work?
Right off the bat, like I am fully all about transparency in this industry, right? I think that the only way that we can combat people being taken advantage of is by being fully transparent with each other. So those numbers have not been my experience at all. My last graphic novel, my last two books sold for $70,000 each.
Nice.
Oh, wow. Damn.
So it's in my
Your mileage
experience,
may vary. Some settling may occur. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got friends. I think standard like entry level middle grade graphic novel advances are typically in the realm of $40,000. So it's definitely not like
independent
lifetime. Like you can't live on that for like the year and a half that it takes you to make the book, but it's the equivalent of a part-time job. So the numbers of seeing like $3,000 for an advance for a book is not
independent
what I've been seeing.
Okay. So there is a field. There is a field of cartooning that actually is profitable at the moment.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if it's just in middle grade graphic novels. That's my area of expertise. That's where I've been selling. So I don't know what the rates look like in other markets. But in my experience, that is very sustative.
For the adult stuff, it seems to be not paying very well.
Yeah, and I have heard that from other people where I've talked to somebody else who recently got like $5,000 for an adult graphic novel. And that is like if you're getting like $3,000 to do 100, 200 pages, then yeah, unsustainable. And it's that all comes down to, the thing we're seeing everywhere where wages aren't matching inflation, right? A friend of mine shared a wage sheet from comic rates from the 70s, and it is the exact same rate that people are being paid now in 2020.
Wow.
I believe 100%. I believe that.
Yeah.
So when you submit a book, for instance, nowadays, been trying to do a children's book. They don't want a concept, before, because I could walk in and say, hey, I'm Scott Stantis and say, I draw a comic strip and I'm an editorial cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune. And here's my one-page synopsis of what I want to try. They don't even consider it. They want to see a finished book. The same was true. Now, are you experiencing that? Because you've had success with Jackson Wilder, I suspect that gives you a lot more cachet if you walk into, say, a Random House and say, I've got these two ideas. What do you think? They're going to be more receptive. Do they expect a finished book from you? When you walk through the door? No.
Nope, never in my life.
Really?
I've all of my books. I've sold 5 books, and I'm working on my pitch for the next one, and they've all been sold on spec.
The lesson here is don't do adult graphic novels.
Or editorial cartoons or a comic strip.
Right.
My last one of my last books I sold, I literally drew one picture of a character and I posted it on my Instagram, and I had an editor saying, I want to publish this. Let's talk. So
wow, Ted and I are we green?
I don't even understand. Yeah. I'm as green as the labels under our names here.
Yes, I am too. That's fantastic, though. I couldn't be prouder. I feel like, obviously a proud papa here because that's fantastic. But honestly, every other aspect of the field, and you've got to be experiencing this at SCAD, people who are, I can't imagine anyone going to editorial cartooning. There's absolutely no reason to. Because there's no money. We have guys who are, Pulitzer Prize winners who are making in the neighborhood of, are you sitting down?
Yeah.
$17,000 to $18,000 a year for producing at least three cartoons a week. Yeah, I know so no one's going into that, but in comic strips, with like web comics, walk me through that a little bit, because I've followed some and I suspect they're getting old. The ones I follow are considered old now. Is there a way to, and I know this sounds like we're all like money, But
you want to think of it as a career, right?
Yes.
You want it to be a sustainable career. Yeah.
Can you do a graphic? Can you do an online a web comic and make it without having to? Okay, I'm stumbling all over myself, because the old model was you did the strip, but it also had ancillary stuff like plushies for a character or two, books, all the other stuff. Is that sustainable? Is that making a career?
Yeah, there are several creators that I know that make their living entirely on doing online comic strips. Jenny Breeden of The Devil's Panties has been doing her comic strip for ages.
Yeah, that's been around forever.
Yeah, and that's still her full-time job. So she draws the comic strip, she prints books, she sells merchandise, she goes to conventions, and that's her job. like I said, there are other like social media comics. So Sarah Anderson of Sarah Scribbles, Katana Comics. Obviously Nathan Pyle from Strange Planet recently got like an animated adaptation. There are people who do their comic strips on Reddit, right? Like Pizza Cake on Reddit. That's her entire career, is drawing like comic strips and posting it online.
And that's her only presence is on Reddit?
Yeah, I think she cross posts to other places, but she like her dominant presence is on Reddit. And so she makes her money. She has a Patreon, and so people can like sign up for her Patreon and they can access her comics early. They can see works in progress. They'll get like, she'll write essays and behind the scenes stuff. And so that's where a lot of her money comes in, is people subscribe to her Patreon to see the content like a week early or to see the behind the scenes stuff. And that's where most of her money comes in.
Yeah, I just came back. We were at a friend's son's wedding reception out in California, and we were near Santa Rosa, so we went to the Schultz Museum and got to see that. And Ted, did you ever get out to Santa Rosa, Ted?
Oh yeah.
It's so weird to see an office where I visited Charles Schultz, and so did you apparently.
Yep.
Sarah, did you ever?
Never met the guy.
He was alive? Tall. But they have his desk and his drawing board behind, as an exhibit. They recreated his office.
That's
and
cool.
It was just so weird being there. There's a point to this. When you and I met, when you were in high school, I was working for the Birmingham News and doing a comic strip and making a living. And that was my living. I didn't really have to go out and do what you're describing, which was, do all the comms, sell merchandise. I was on staff and got paid a salary and had benefits and all that stuff. That's gone. It just seems to me that how much, if you want to do a comic strip now, you mentioned what these other creators are doing. And I suspect they're at a level now where they can have other people helping them. They can hire people to do it, but still that's got to be a drain, and it's a distraction from the creative process. And again, old guy here. No, truly. I mean, I think of that and say, God, that would be so exhausting.
It's a lot.
But it's what you have to do in that world to be successful. And syndicates are got to be useless. I mean, in terms of, but I do see a lot of like a Strange Planet. Did they sign on with a syndicate? I don't know if they're actually like at Go Comics or Comics Kingdom.
I'm not sure.
Okay. See, the fact that you don't do you go to either of those sites?
No, like I get my comic strips on Instagram and Reddit. Like I read a lot of comic strips, but they all come to me. I don't go to them.
But how do you discover new ones?
They show up on my social media feed. You like enough comic strips, and then the algorithms will recommend you new ones.
That's amazing. That is such a different world. And like I said, I'm sorry to sound like such a damn dinosaur here. Yeah, the buggy whips, they're never go out of fashion, right, Teddy?
It's interesting, really.
So that's fantastic about your graphic novels. I mean, I couldn't be more excited. So, I mean, do you have, of the students who come through, can we talk, just the three of us here, and just have the students come, do you have people who come through? Like I said, when I saw you and saw your work, I knew you were going to make it. I knew you were going to be successful. Do you have how many students shouldn't be doing this?
I think in general, most quarters, out of the students that I have, if I have a class of like 20 students, there are going to be one or two that are really stand out and are going to make it big in the industry. And I think that's pretty standard, is about 10% of the students are amazing. And if they can lock in and they can make the right connections, they're going to do incredible things. And I am so looking forward to seeing some of my students go off and do like incredible stuff.
Cool. Now, Ted, like he's mentioned earlier, has done a lot of graphic novels. He did some biographies, one of which actually was it the Bernie Sanders that made it to the bestseller list?
And Edward Snowden.
Oh, the Snowden one did too. Okay. But that publisher, I mean, is there any room for growth there now, or are they begging you for more? Or are they?
Well, actually, I mean, you're familiar. Terry Nantier is published those at NBM. and NBM was part of Papercuts, or the other way around. Anyway, no, I mean, look, here's the thing. I can push it, and I can, go out. I guess the whole point is kind of like Scott. I'm not sure. I need to maybe get over myself, but it's like when you're used to, like, I've had that experience of being able to call a publisher and just say, hey, I'd like to do a book about Edward Snowden. And it's like, send me a couple sample pages and done. And now it's like you're starting from scratch. And part of it is it's a lot of work to start from scratch, especially, and it also feels a little insulting and beneath you when you've already broken into this very same industry years ago, and it was really, really hard to break into. And then you're like, wait, I have to break into the same industry all over again. And it's like, so yeah, I can, I mean, I could probably do that. I need to be motivated. I have to, honestly, I don't care about money enough to be willing to seek to chase the market and be like, okay, like, just talking to you now, Sarah, I'm like, do I want to do, stuff for people who are in junior high school or middle school? And the answer is no, I don't. And I don't look down on it. Far from it. I've been in 8th grade and I loved books and I loved graphic novels. They made me the person I am today. Well, they didn't have graphic novels, comic books. And, but I don't think I would be any good at it. And I don't think I would enjoy it because I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be good at it. So it's kind of like, so I'd rather do a book that I would rather see in the world, even if it doesn't mean it's going to sell as well, because that's just, I'm at that stage in my life where I just want to like leave behind some things that I cared about. And I don't know, that's a long answer, but it's that between art and business that I hate. I was meant to live like in the Soviet Union as a state-sponsored artist who was told like, Comrade Stalin loves your work, Comrade Rall. It's like, you'll just do anything you want. You are guaranteed income. I hate having to hustle for stuff like this. I just do.
Really? Because you're so good at it. I mean that very, very sincerely. You have carved out an incredibly successful career. And a lot of cartoonists who've been on staff who probably shouldn't have been. But many of them say, how does he do that? How does he do that? And then, of course, as the cuts. What's that?
I do what I hate. Yeah, but I'm not going to change the art for that. I'm not going to like go after like, people really want graphic novels about artichokes. Like, let's do those. Like, no. I walk around like a typical comics convention now, and I don't like most of the work I see. In other words, I wouldn't read it, right? I don't care about it. It's like, it's very not a lot of politics anymore, not a lot of hard-boiled kind of noirish type stuff, and a lot of it like bores me. So I'm like, I don't know if I fit into this industry anymore, to be honest.
Well, I was going to ask, kind of segue into comic books, because Sarah also worked, in the comic book industry. She worked at a comic shop here in Birmingham for years, and the industry. Where are comic books in all of this in the universe? Are they doing well? Are they diminishing now? Are they getting fewer and fewer? Are people buying the hard copies? Or, I go to the comic shops, obviously, when I walk by one, and there seems to be a significant pull list. They also post the dates of new releases. So there's clearly a market there. Is it still vibrant?
I think it's hanging in there. I think comic books, like our monthly superhero type comic books, like Marvels and DCs, they have a hard time getting new readers. I think most of the people who are reading and buying comics are the people who have been reading and buying comics since they were kids. But now it's like every couple of years, it's like there's a reboot, there's an event, there's like a retcon, there's like something. And it's hard for somebody who hasn't already grown up reading these monthly issue comics to find a place to start. You walk into a comic book shop and you see Amazing Spider-Man issue number 667. And you're like, do I have to read 600 issues of Spider-Man to know what's happening? And then there'll be people like, well, you don't have to do that. So you can come in at this jump on point and you can read this alternate history and you can read this different dimension. And it's like, it's so unapproachable.
Yeah.
And I think
I find it unapproachable, and I'm 62 years old. When I walk into like Forbidden Planet or whatever, it's like I'm like, it's overwhelmingly my eyes glaze over, and also so much of it looks and feels exactly the same.
Yeah, it's
product.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're seeing a lot of similar issues that we saw in the 90s with like that spec boom market where, you know, we started seeing like really gimmicky covers and like foil and whatever, just like desperately trying to get people to buy like every variant cover because the issues weren't selling enough on their own. So it's like they're not appealing to people who are reading the comics, they're appealing to people who are collecting the comics. And I think we're kind of doing that again. We've got blind bags. We've got 20 different variant covers for every issue. We've got blank sketch covers. Like it feels like they're trying every gimmick in the bag to try.
Even with indie comics, right? Like if you go to like Small Press Expo, you know, I don't know, probably 90% of what's being sold is merchandise, not comics.
Yeah. And you see that a lot in like local comic shows and stuff. I was tabling at a comic book show here in Savannah last year. And of the like 75 vendors, maybe 5 or 6 of them were selling primarily comics. Everyone else had merch, keychains and prints and stickers and yeah.
So, I mean, with the advent of this full disclosure, one of the dumbest things, and believe me, this is a life full of dumb decisions, but was a friend of mine said in the 90s, said, you should buy Marvel. I hear they might be coming out with some movies. And it was dudes, it was a penny stock. It was just like, and I thought, yeah, you know, I don't know. Do I really want to flush that $20 that would have gotten me 300 shares of Marvel down the toilet? I don't know. That seems like a lot of money I could spend on, you know,
anything.
My DeLorean. My DeLorean stock or something else.
Story about this exact situation, real quick. So the Stan, the man who owned Kingdom Comics, he bought his comic book shop because of Marvel stock. He bought it when it was pennies and when they were announcing that they were doing the first Spider-Man movie, right? The Sam Raimi Spider-Man. And he bought stock then, and he made so much money after that first Sony Spider-Man movie that he bought his comic book shop.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, that's like I said, but so the Marvel movies come out, that gins up enormous interest in those characters. And then the Avengers comes out. And so you have the whole cross platform of the different titles. Is it because the interest in the Marvel universe and the Marvel comics and the DC movies have never been great? I mean, is that part of what's happening, why they lost a younger audience, or is this the younger audience just consuming this stuff in a totally different way?
Yeah, like it's kind of across the board. The movies, as successful and amazing as the movies are, it's not reflecting in a significant growth in comic sales. So people are watching movies, but overall, they're not reading the comics.
Wow, that's amazing to me. It just seemed to me just a natural crossover synergy that, I mean, I saw the film and I really liked Captain America. There's a little bit of it, but not nearly to the level that you might think. Wow. So getting to your teaching, when you teach your courses now in sequential art, are you teaching to the new media? I know you use an iPad now, or what are you drawing on?
I primarily work on a big display tablet that hooks up to my computer. So it's like a 27-inch screen drawing tablet. And I've got like 4 monitors around me. So it's like a Star Trek battle station.
So you have to wear sunscreen before you go to work.
It's like, and then she was struck by radioactivity that turned her into a radioactive cartoonist.
I'm not entirely sure what powers you would have.
Buy more computer equipment.
I can push off deadlines indefinitely. But are you so what are you drawing on? You didn't really say the device.
Yeah, so I've got it's a Huion Canvas 27-inch drawing screen, and I work primarily in Clip Studio Paint as my program.
Interesting. Are you teaching? So are you teaching to that? I mean, and also how people are consuming, because like I mentioned, I mean, people are still creating comic art. They're just not buying comic books. So I'm assuming it has to land somewhere, right? I mean, there are other sites where comic book art can land.
Yeah, so a lot of it is on Webtoon. Webtoon is huge. It's long form narrative storytelling that you can read for free on your phone. It's all formatted to be easily read on your phone. So it's not formatted as a page. It's like scrolling panels. And so it's easy to read on your phone. It's free. Anyone.
It's not a business. Free's not a business model, though.
It's free to read, and then you can like unlock. So you can do like premium access where you get episodes early, or you can like pay to download an entire season instead of having to like read it on your phone when you've got internet, and you do ad revenue and things like that.
Okay. So now getting back to my question, I mean, teaching your students, what do you? I'm a 19-year-old dipshit, Scott Stantis, walking in with my ink on paper drawings. How do you try to direct me? And what do you tell me? If sequential art is a direction you think I can go, A, and B, I should go.
Yeah. So as far as like, tools and things like that, like a lot of people do still work traditionally. If a student walks in and they've got their ink and their paper, I'm going to encourage them to do their ink and their paper and like lock in on that. In the collector's market, there's still a big market for people wanting to buy original pages, which don't exist when you're working digitally. So I encourage people to work traditionally if that's how they prefer to work. I usually think it's better to learn traditionally first and then transition to digital once you have like the fundamental drawing skills under your belt. But a lot of these young students, they're growing up with iPads and with tablets. And so they come in and they're already working digitally. So it's not like I have to teach them how to draw on an iPad or how to draw in Clip Studio. They already know it. They've been doing it since they were 12 years old.
And so, okay, I have a kid in this neighborhood. She just got into the art high school here, the junior high, I guess, low 8th grade. And she wants to be a cartoonist. What do I tell her? Because I mean, she's kind of looking at me now like I am what I am, which is a dinosaur. I need to give her better advice. What should I tell her?
The advice I always give to people if they want to make comics is just make comics. You don't have to go to school for it. You don't need a degree for it. I think the absolute best way for you to learn how to make comics is to make comics. Read a lot of comics, draw a lot of comics. Do master studies of the cartoonists that you like, read all of the Scott McCloud books and, just do the thing. I think a lot of people, especially young people, want to wait until they're ready or until they feel like they are good enough before starting on their stories. And genuinely, the best way to do it is just to do it, just start. How old is this person? Like 12?
12.
I would tell them to read a copy of The Cartoonist Club. It's a collaboration between Scott McCloud and Raina Telgemeier, who did Smile, which is still one of the best graphic novels of all time. And so it's this cute little graphic novel that is like half middle school misfits trying to find their place, and half here's how you make comics, and here are some very quick and easy projects that you can do, and how to like make your own little mini zines and things like that. So it's super cute. That's the thing that I give.
Cartoonist Club?
Cartoonist Club.
Okay, I will buy her a copy of that. Cool. Yeah, I mean, we do what we do because we have to do it, right? I mean, I've told my origin story before, but I was a pre-law major in college. I really hadn't. I looked at cartoons. I liked them, but I was not like this massive fan or consumer. And the editorial cartoonist on the college paper sucked. I walked in and said, your cartoonist sucks. Can I try? And they said, yes. I know it sounds very unlike me.
Wait. And you literally, you made your move by like encouraging your predecessor to get canned?
Not canned. There was plenty. There was room for all of us. It's a college paper. I mean,
did they keep them? The other person?
She did not. She was because she had been dating one of the editors, and that did not end well. So, and she was also student body president, so that also created a conflict of interest. That, I didn't go in to fire her, destroy her, Scott Crunch. But I went in, they said yes, and I just fell in love with cartooning at that point. I said, oh, this is where I should have been. Could you imagine me, either one of you, as an attorney? I would be so coked out. I'd be on my 5th marriage. It would have just been a train wreck. It would have been awful. So I landed exactly where I should have landed. And so did Ted. I mean, Ted, your origin story is, you were a cartoonist since you were, wanted to be a cartoonist since you were very young, right?
Yeah. I was first published in my little tiny local suburban paper when I was 15. And basically, by the time I went to college, I had 8 little local papers and, worked at the college papers. And I had kind of that usual path. I mean, my divergence from the sort of tradition, like where your path, Scott, was I've never got to work for a daily paper. I always ended up, I sort of built up through syndication. That was my break. And it was kind of like, and I was able to make enough money through syndication to make a living. And that, and also freelance illustration and books and
best-selling book didn't hurt.
No, that's true. Thank God for that. Revenge of the Latchkey Kids really helped save my ass. It put me on the map. But that was the 90s were a good time for me anyway. Yeah.
For a lot of us, it was just.
Oh, I miss them. I miss. I always think of Bill Clinton when he had that that personal appearance on SNL the last week he was in office, and he's walking around the basement of the White House. He's trying to use the candy machine, and he can't figure out how to make it work. And he just turns to the camera and he just goes, "You're gonna miss me. You'll see." We do.
The honest, the squeaky clean Clinton administration. Yeah, you kind of do.
Oh, we do miss him. We do.
Yeah, we do.
Presidency is a study in entropy. Mark my words. In 20 years, we'll be looking back and we'll be like, that Donald Trump wasn't so bad.
I don't know if that's true. I just can't. I really, 20 years from now, I'll be drooling into a cup. So that's let's be honest. But this guy, I looking at it from a historic standpoint, I don't know that he's going. There's always. There was George W. Bush nostalgia. Remember when that kicked in?
Yes, people have it now.
Well, because of what we're facing, maybe more.
Everything that's bad can always get worse. My Russian friends always remind me of that.
That's comforting.
Yes, thank you. And on that note, while we tie things up here, and thanks Sarah Davidson, Sarah White Davidson, as she's known in my house. Yeah, we remember her. Sarah, where can our listeners and viewers see your work?
So I am on Instagram. I'm Sarah Davidson Art. My website is sarahdavidsonart.com. My book series, Jackson's Wilder Adventures, is out in bookstores all over the country. And the 3rd book is coming out this summer, so keep an eye out.
Oh my God, congratulations. You don't do book signings, do you?
I do occasionally locally. So I've done some at my local Barnes & Noble and things like that. And at my
How'd that go?
It was really fun. I did a reading, and there were some kids that showed up, and I signed stuff. It was really fun. It was very cute.
So they promoted you.
That's the advantage of doing that marketing to that age. You get to meet kids; they're great.
Yeah, kids are the best, and they're just excited about everything. So it's kind of fun.
It is. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We both do. So thank you
for having me.
I don't have a song teed up here. Usually I know it's weird. I sing the outro, and
true. I was going to wonder if you were going to humiliate yourself in front of Professor Davidson. But
Oh, she's seen far worse. She's seen me in a swimsuit. It's like, I can't. I'm trying to think of. We're just celebrating the '90s. What's it like a quintessential '90s song?
oh, that's a good.
Wonderwall.
A Nirvana song, maybe.
Oh no, no. She did it. Go ahead and start it.
All right, here we go.
Today is going to be the day that they're going to send it back to you. I don't know the rest of the words because I didn't research that's the song. I know.
Not bad.
Not great, but not bad. Sarah, thanks again.
Thanks, guys.